Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mari's Golden Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. So, I don't know about your week, but mine has been spent mainly recouping from the huge amount of maintenance that was done. And just shifting, cleaning, re-cleaning, getting rid of, purging, what other words in the thesaurus I can use, and just trying to reorganize and get myself back on track. And that has really been the week. Thank you. Good night. So, let's see. What other things can I touch on? Music. I think I mentioned this already, but some of my music recommendations. Shy Girl, Body. Sabrina Claudio, Warm December. Sister Sledge. Sister Sledge popped in my head. I think that might have been last week, and for whatever reason, popped in again, and I am sticking with it. And I would just say, pick any of their songs. They had a lot of different hits. Jump was one that was on the radio for a very long time, and I remember being forced to play that in marching band, and personally, I'm tired of the song because I had to practice it so often, and they had way better hits than Jump, in my opinion. And Shalimar, I was listening to a DJ spin, and they included an old Shalimar track that's called Take That to the Bank. Look that one up, because that is like a early, like deep in the crates cut for Shalimar. But Shalimar did like a lot of really groovy, funky, soulful hits. I think, what was it? Early 80s, mid 80s, I think. I can't remember when they disbanded. But as with most trios, they disbanded over just internal issues, and I think a band member left and a new one came in, and he wasn't having how the old ways were. I don't know, I can't remember. And, speaking of songs, so I heard a reference that was made to a show that was on, again, I believe this is like around the 80s, I think. It was an old TV show. And I was listening to Bill Burr's podcast, and he ended up bringing up the theme song for WKRP in Cincinnati, and I found myself just feeling a little nostalgic and singing along with the theme song and just knowing the words, just knowing all the words. And also within that podcast, I found out a little bit of trivia. The end credit for that show, where the guy like rocks out, it's more like this, the opening credits, it's that smooth, the light jazz, the smooth jazz, that very Christopher Cross, Arthur theme song kind of groove. That's the opening theme song, and it's very easy listening. That's what I was looking for, easy listening. The end credits for that TV show, it's very it's like rock and roll radio station vibe. And so through listening to that podcast, I found out that I guess that the lead singer, he was just rocking out and singing nonsense. I think it was for a sound check. And the sound engineer, I guess, or the producer, whomever liked it so much, they just kept it. And so that's why nobody can understand what the guy is saying at the very end of WKRP in Cincinnati. Or I should say, WKRP in Cincinnati. And thank you very much. That ends my singing, and hopefully your ears haven't bled. What else can I recommend? Movies. So, a couple of movies I checked out. One of them is called Love and Monsters. I think it's new or new-ish. And I think this might have been one of those movies that was filmed possibly pre-pandemic or pre and a little post. Well, we're still in the pandemic, but I'd say pre-pandemic, post-lockdown, and when the restrictions kind of lightened up. Because I think this movie was filmed in Australia, and it could have been during that time when they just had a very strict bubble around production. I think. I don't know. I haven't done the research on this one, but I just watched the movie and noticed that they filmed it in Australia. So it's called Love and Monsters. I went into it not knowing a thing about it. I just saw the title, saw a couple of reviews, and decided, you know what, let me just check it out. And even the reviews I read, if it was like really thick, I didn't read it because I don't want to be swayed too much with any of the plot. And I just, again, went into it with zero info, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. I could see them coming out with potentially a sequel. We'll see. But it's funny. I don't know. It was cute. A little bit of humor in it. Not funny haha and knee slapping and tears, but it was cute. I liked it. And I did a couple of chuckles throughout the movie. The other one I saw, it's called, and this was random, it's called Space Dogs, Adventure to the Moon. Apparently, there was one, I think it was just called Space Dogs, and it didn't have like that secondary title. So Space Dogs, Adventure to the Moon is a sequel, and I believe the third in the trilogy. I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy or just like a third installment, let's just say. It should be released, I think, this month, maybe later on in December, not too sure. And apparently it is a Russian-produced, directed, animated, and acted animated movie. But the one that I saw is the one that has the American dub and the American direction. But it's cute. It wasn't anything super stellar, but for whatever reason, it sucked me in. And also there's a couple of tunes in it. The music is surprisingly catchy. The first one I heard, I'm like, this is cheesy, but it hooked me in. I'm there for it. So check out Space Dogs, Adventure to the Moon. You'll be pleasantly surprised, I guarantee it. What's another one? I saw, it's part of my, what I like to call fluffy movie watching, and this is when I will look at various movies that are Hallmark-y, or Lifetime-y, or Up-TV-y, and it's called Santa Girl, and watching it I realized, wait a minute, I recognize a name in there. So I, again, send out kudos to friends or relatives of friends or the family of friends who do successful things, whether it is writing a book or starring in something, completing an obstacle course, winning the Nobel Prize, scoring a record deal, which, any and all of that stuff. It's very difficult to do, so I tip my hat, I take a bow, I give you kudos, and I applaud. So Santa Girl, it's cute. Again, not anything Oscar worthy, but a lot of the stuff that I watch, it tends not to be. Doesn't matter how good it is, I know that it won't get huge awards, at least not at the Oscars. Maybe one day that'll change. It's the other one. Another one I'm looking at currently. I still haven't finished watching it, but I can kind of guess the direction that it's heading. Actually, I'm not quite too sure, but I kind of do see it. It's called Four Christmases and a Wedding. It's a Lifetime movie, and it is cute. I like it. It's something I will finish watching with a little snack, maybe a little beverage or two, and wrap up in blankets and call it a night. Let's see. So early this week, I was being a bit of a movie nerd, and there was a conversation that I ended up replying to and checking out. It's called Behind the Screens. It was Behind the Screens, which I don't know if it's a program, but it's a conversation that was hosted by KCRW's Madeline Brand, and the interview was with Rada Blank. who is the writer and director of this Netflix film that's called The 40-Year-Old Version. And I don't have Netflix, but a lot of other people do, so if you have Netflix, please check it out. Oops, had a little tickle in my throat. So, the movie is called 40-Year-Old Version, and the movie follows Radha. Yeah, Radha, that's how you pronounce her name. Who is a New York playwright who is looking for a breakthrough before she turns 40. And what she does, she reinvents herself as a rapper, and she bounces back and forth between theater and hip-hop in order to find her voice. And it won a directing prize at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival, and it seems like it's funny, it's candid, it's very, very personal, and it is shot in black and white, 35 millimeter, and just the look of it is just very cool. Hold on. Sorry about that. Still had that tickle in my throat just from not drinking enough beverages. Sorry. But yeah, it looks nostalgic. It looks like it showcases New York. It feels very hip hop. And I think it's because it's shot in black and white, and just the way that it's shot, it has a feeling of nostalgia. Like you feel like you're in the 90s during that hip hop era, not when it was created, but just that certain golden age of hip hop that was in the 90s. There was another golden age that was in the 80s that was like, something. But yeah, it showcases New York. I suspect that New York will become a character in this film, like it does with a lot of different movies, and it showcases those who meet with adversity and creativity, and I am there for it. So if there's some way I can get that Netflix movie or a Netflix account, maybe, I don't know, I'll check that out. I'll see it at some point, I know it. And so I ended up asking a question, and I also was giving Radha, the director, kudos for the movie, and just showing us as like women who do not have the typical Hollywood figure or looks, women who are darker complected, and women who are not in their teens, and maybe they're not a love interest. And just hearing everything about this movie, it just sounds very cool. It's realistic. It is today. It is now. And again, I am here for it. So I gave her kudos and also asked a question, and they were running out of time, but the host, Madeline Brand, mentioned my name. She gave me a shout out and passed along my kudos. And so both of them, what I was impressed with is that both of them said my name, and they said it correctly, like right out the gate. I was like, I was taken back by that, because I'm not used to anybody, whenever I write out my name, number one, saying it properly the first time around. And there's people, I will write my name and they will spell it with other letters that I personally did not include at all whatsoever. So anyway, and even after I say my name, they'll still pronounce it incorrectly. So I'm used to it, but that just surprised me. So go check out 40-Year-Old Version. What else did I do? Oh, I was listening to a lot of wellness podcasts this week, and one that I checked out, it's called, excuse me, hold on one second. Sorry about that. Just had to clear my throat, and I didn't think you wanted to hear me hacking away. The podcast is called Trying Again, and the host is Rachel Smith. In the particular episode I checked out, it's called Mental Health Support After Miscarriage. And I did not have a miscarriage, but I was giving the podcast a chance just because it was part of a wellness thing. And actually, I'm glad I listened to it. She had several people that she interviewed. The first one that I listened to, her name is Julia Bueno. She's a psychotherapist, and she was the first person interviewed in this particular podcast. And there was just a bunch of things that she said that just popped out, and I said, oh wow, I find find that helpful. Like, even though I didn't go through those experiences, the coping mechanisms I found were helpful, and they apply to other situations in life. And just overall, the whole podcast was just very, very interesting. And a lot of the symptoms and solutions that the women went through, I find that they're just similar to a whole bunch of other issues that many people go through. And, yes, it's geared towards women. So a lot of this I would find helpful, like just women in general would find this helpful. And then actually there were some things that even men would find helpful too. And I found it, like listening to this, I was able to understand why people would attend seminars or meetings that maybe don't necessarily pertain to them, but they would find the mantras and the just the different qualities helpful. Like, for example, like AA. Like, somebody might not be an alcoholic, but the support and the helpful stories and that feeling that you're not alone in the situation, like, they apply to so many different aspects of one's life. So I get it. So I guess I bring all that up to say, check out that podcast. And actually, there's a lot of really cool podcasts that are featured on Podbean. I know that you're listening to mine right now. Search around. There's so much out there. And if you do a search for wellness, a whole list of things will pop up. What else? Let me pause this again. Sorry about breaking things up. So, next time I do this, I'll make sure that I have a wee dram of something, be it some whiskey or water, something, just to wet my whistle. What else? Oh, I was watching an interview that Trixie and Katya were doing on Build, and I think it was from a couple years ago. I can't remember. One of the things that Katya had mentioned was, this is something, I'm like, why haven't more people talked about this? Because ever since this chick came on the scene, I'm like, does anybody else see this? No? What? And this was that movie, was it She's All That? Or She's a Man? Yeah, I think it was She's All That. It's the one where, oh, no. It's the one where Drew Barrymore goes back to high school. Why can't I remember that movie? It'll come to me later. But anyway, so Katya was saying that she was talking about Lily Sobieski and how Lily Sobieski is Helen Hunt. I thought Katya said, Helen Hunt from 20 years in the future, but now. But I think what Katya meant to say was Lily Sobieski is Helen Hunt 20 years ago, but she traveled in time and she's here now, currently with, like, Helen Hunt. So I know that I'm not saying this properly, but it makes sense to me. And I was, like, looking at the comments and how people were talking about how Katya was, like, going off the rails, and I don't think so. It makes perfect sense to me, because I always thought Lily Sobieski looked like a young Helen Hunt. And why nobody else mentioned this ever, I have no idea. But I totally got where Katya was coming from, in that Lily Sobieski is Helen Hunt 20 years ago. Yeah, like her younger 20-year-old self. But it traveled through time to currently be with the present Helen Hunt. To be with her older self. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. Anyway, moving right along. So, this is an article I saw on CNN, I think it was last week or week before. And the title, it's Sonic Attacks Suffered by U.S. Diplomats Likely Caused by Microwave Energy. And it was something that they did a government study, and they came up with mysterious mysterious head injuries that U.S. diplomats ended up suffering. And this is the diplomatic staff that were based in China and Cuba. And apparently they had, according to the study, it was like directed microwave energy. It was like this pulsed radio frequency that was directed at them. And some of the symptoms were, of course, dizziness, and then there was like headache, difficulty reading, irritability, memory and sleep problems, and, well, I could make a joke or a social commentary, like, well, those are symptoms that a lot of black people face daily, or these are symptoms that women have every month. Yeah, I could make a better joke out of that some sort of way, but it's true. There's a lot of these symptoms that people would have in general. Like, I've been irritable. I would forget things on occasion. I've experienced sleep problems. Difficulty reading. That one, I don't know if when they mention difficulty reading, like, they can't make out certain words, or something is wrong with their eyesight, like the words are fuzzy. I don't know what they mean by difficulty reading, like which way. Headaches and dizziness, getting those on occasion. Dizziness, I think, personally, I've experienced dizziness just from not eating or being dehydrated. So, again, a lot of these symptoms, many people could be experiencing, and they have experienced, but with those symptoms alone, could that microwavable energy be directed at us at any given time, like using people as experiments? I don't know. That's all out there. But it just, reading that reminded me of that old TV show Fringe. Like, I don't know. I'm seeing more and more of that stuff pop up. So, with sadness, rest in peace, Tommy Tiny Lister, who was known for being in the Friday films and also Fifth Element, among a list of other things. He was an actor and a wrestler, and found out that apparently he passed away yesterday, Friday. And right before I was ready to record the podcast today, I saw that Charlie Pride had passed away today, and who is the first black country superstar. Yeah. And he had a string of number one hits, I believe. And you can, the CMT News, they did a rather extensive article on him. And I'm sure there's going to be other things to come later on down the pike. But he had 29 number one hits between 1969 and 1983. He charted 67 singles. And he was the top 10 country radio, I believe, like 10 times, 12 times. Like, it was a lot. And, I don't know, excuse me, he just had a lot of hits. And one of them, She's Just an Old Love Turned Memory. That song sounds familiar to me, and I know I've heard his music, but listening or reading the titles alone, they weren't quite ringing a bell, but I know I've heard them. So, just an all-around good egg, and I remember him as a kid, just this very nice, very affable guy who had a really great voice. And my mom listened to country music a lot as a kid, and that's where I grew my appreciation for Dolly Parton and for Charlene, which I know Charlene isn't country, but I kind of put her on par, sort of, in that realm. Karen Carpenter, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that, voice getting raspy yet again. Kenny Rogers, I can't remember if I mentioned Kenny Rogers. Yeah, but definitely Dolly Parton. And Charlie Pride was up there as well. And just, I just recall him from, like, Grand Ole Opry. He might have done, I think he might have been on Hee Haw at some point. I'm not too sure. Does anybody remember that show, Hee Haw? Yeah, I know. That went into the deep cuts. But, man, we're just losing a lot of people. Like, too many people are passing away at young ages. And, I understand people naturally passing in, late 80s, 90s, even close to 100. But just too many people are passing away way too young, and it is not necessarily all COVID related, although these two were. And, as some of you may know, it hits very hard for me because my mom passed away at the height of this pandemic in April, and she passed away from COVID. So, it's just, and I know I'm not the only one who has had a loved one pass from this pandemic, but, it hits hard just because I couldn't be with her. But another story, another time. So rest in peace for those gentlemen who have recently left us. And so on a lighter note, and there's no great segue for this at all whatsoever, I was tooling around online doing research for something and got sidetracked majorly because I was looking at a sweater. And so this sweater, it had a description, and part of the description said, vintage 1997 sweater, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, wait, vintage 1997? What? And it just made me wonder, like, well, what constitutes as vintage? Like, how far back in years do you need to go for something to be vintage? Because in my mind, vintage is like 60s, earlier than that, I mean, maybe 70s, but, like, how far back is vintage? Like, do we go back 20 years? Or, I mean, this case is 1997, so, I don't know. And, what else? So, I am just continuously chipping away and doing that constant work in progress wellness work. That is what I feel like I've been going through the past couple of weeks, and part of that is just in like a reaction and trying to counteract some of the crappy stuff or the potholes of life that I've been going through, and trying not to spiral into any sort of depression and curling up in a ball in tears and throwing a blanket over my head. So I have been working on just trying to remain positive and working on the wellness stuff and just researching what's good for me, whether it is like multivitamin stuff, different foods to eat, and just having it confirmed and reconfirmed that a lot of the wellness things are not a one-size-fits-all, especially when it comes to supplements. But more on that another time. And just constantly working on being mindful and meditating. And I believe that even sitting with yourself, thinking about nothing, is meditating. When I first hopped on the meditation scene, I saw this as like something that you had to have like a certain level of something in order to be able to do, whether it's a certain level of knowledge or a level in clarity, education, finances, whatever, or you had to travel to some mountain and sit cross-legged for hours on end and freeze, or sweat to death or something. But I have learned definitely since then, and I am of the belief that yes, you can just sit there and think of nothing, and that's meditating. Or you can go outside and take a walk around the block and look at the trees, and that can be a meditation. There's so many different things you can do that I consider as a meditation, and just it doesn't have to be like a big expensive spa weekend in the Alps, and it can just be just something as simple. Maybe it's petting your animal, Maybe it's petting yourself. That could be a meditation too. And just remembering that meditation is self-care. And we all need to do that for ourselves. A lot of self-care. So, even checking out this podcast, checking out Mari's Golden Hour, I consider that a little bit of self-care as well. So, and definitely me doing this podcast is a form of self-care. So, I appreciate you checking in and listening, and thank you. So, I will end it for today with be safe, be considerate, enjoy the holiday lights, enjoy the holiday goodies, and enjoy your golden hour.